Les, how are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm all right, thank you. Where are you today?
So today I'm in Edinburgh in Scotland. I'm
Ah,
just at home.
beautiful, beautiful. It doesn't sound like a Scottish accent to me.
No, it is admittedly not a Scottish accent. I am originally from California.
Wonderful,
And yeah, I live abroad now in Scotland.
wonderful. Well, we'll find out all about living in the States and why you found yourself in Edinburgh as this conversation unfolds. But we always start the conversation the same way. And I'm going to ask you to kick off your playlist by telling me the song that you regard as having the greatest ever intro, please.
So the greatest ever intro, I had to think about because there are so many great ones. And I went with the iconic At Last, Etta
Mm,
James. I think it's just so distinct. I think as soon as you hear the first note, you know exactly what it is.
yeah, it's interesting. Like, that track has got that beautiful sort of string arrangement
Hmm.
before it starts singing, and it's quite strange. Like that style of string intros has been very popular in this track, in this question that I ask guests, not so much
Hmm.
out of James, but lots of people have chose Change Gonna Come by Sam Cooke, which has
Hmm.
got that same
Yeah,
lush string before this beautiful vocal
yeah.
comes in. I'm going to ask you how you, when you're songwriting, how you approach the intro, and what I want to kind of plant the sort of seed in your head as well is obviously the way that people get music now is through streaming services, through even through apps like TikTok and things like that. Audiences are now utilizing these places to get all the music that they can, that is available, and that is a lot. And so I think that puts pressure on artists to hook them quickly, because I don't know the stats of music that gets added to Spotify daily, but I imagine it's significant.
Mhm.
So, with all of that in mind, like, does any of these sort of trends and movements in how people are consuming their music and how maybe attention spans are getting a little tighter, um, does any of that filter through into your creative process when you're writing? And I guess essentially, I'm asking this question more towards the intro.
Hmm. Yeah, so I think, I mean, obviously, so many musicians now are subject to the limitations of like even time constraints, what's going to trigger the algorithms and everything. So, you're looking at well, like whittling things down from, the 450 that you might want to 345, and where you're going to cut pieces off. That's going to be generally, the intro, outro, transitions between, verses, chorus, that kind of thing. So oftentimes I feel a bit restricted by the time constraints that are in place now. And it's not quite as freeing in terms of just being able to really indulge in a beautiful intro, or outro and that kind of thing. But I still try and write not for the time constraints and then crop later if you can. Ideally it's like, there's a high chance that you're gonna have to whittle away at those things,
Yeah.
especially if you're putting out like a single or something. Um, but I think, album placement too, you can play with longer intros, more of that later in the album, track 7, track 8, when it's not going to matter as much. And that, in a way that can be quite nice because you can kind of tuck these little gems in later in the album that maybe aren't going to be the star of the show, but if someone's having a listening experience, especially if they enjoy listening to a full record, they're going to get those cool intros and details like later in the album. I think for me, I'm very lyric driven. I would say I'm maybe not the most advanced instrumentalist. So writing an intro is often like not my focus generally, but sometimes I just jump right into a song. Sometimes I just, go right in with all of the lyrics at the same time, just kind of just hitting, and it's quite abrupt. And I like that. But yeah, a well-placed intro definitely I do tend to miss, especially from some of the songs that you've got to put out as a single, I suppose.
I think it's a worrying time if songwriters are considering algorithms when they're writing songs.
I agree.
It doesn't sound very, I don't know. It's not natural, right?
Right.
You should write, and I think there's no right or wrong answer to that question. I'm always curious as to what artists' responses are, but I definitely lean more towards what you said. I think like write the big expansive record, and if you have to crop it a little bit later, then crop it for the single and fill it back out for the album.
Yeah, definitely. It is really antithetical to the artistic process, I think, to have to, consider those things while you're writing. So generally I try not to, and then but you can't help it. I think it's just a little bit of an anxiety that you have at all times when you're making a track now. It's just like, I'm putting, 5 verses in, and I really want to tell this story, but I'm not going to be able to release this as like a single or something. I mean, if I want to hope to, get it heard. So I think it's just unfortunate artifact of the time we live in and the technology that we're working with. And I mean, yeah, it's unfortunate. So
I'm going to ask you for track 2 to tell me the first song you remember hearing that had an emotional impact on you, please.
Yeah, so this is always a fun one. The first song that I actually remember hearing at all was Moonshadow by Yusuf Cat Stevens. And that was one I almost considered for the intro, because whenever I hear the first like notes of that song, I'm always transported back to, I was very little. I think we had Tea for the Tillerman on vinyl, and that's how we used to listen to it in my house. So we'd put it on the turntable, and I even had like a toy horse, like a big toy horse that I nicknamed Moonshadow, and I loved the song. It was like an immersive experience for me, and it was so emotionally moving, and I didn't even fully understand the lyrical content at the time, but I was like 3 or 4 years old. But I just remember listening to it over and over again. I'd make my parents, play it again and again, and yeah.
Where was growing up?
It was basically at that time when I was that young, it was LA County. It was like a suburb of LA. Yeah.
Was home a musical place? I mean, you just mentioned that Cat Stevens was on the turntable, but was you exposed to other music in the indoors? Was there instruments at home? Like, how musical was your upbringing?
Yeah, my parents both are musical. They both sing and play guitar, and so I would say very, very musical upbringing, and listening to music was a huge part of what we would do. It was very specific music. It was, based on my dad's taste, and then my mom had her taste. So it was kind of a combination of what they liked to listen to. But we also kind of were a little bit technologically behind the times. So we had vinyl. We had like an old wooden radio, and then we had like a karaoke machine on 8-track. And so we used to do 8-track karaoke, and would sing like The Doors and stuff on karaoke. And I mean, then we would play, and my dad played guitar, and my parents actually, they wrote me a lullaby. So from the time I was like, basically from when I can remember, I always was singing a song of some kind. So I think it was, a very musical, very musically focused upbringing.
Tell me a little bit about the differences between your mother's taste in music and your father's taste in music. What sort of stuff was you being exposed to?
And there was a lot of overlap there between the two of them, but my mom, let's see, what was she listening to? I think it was kind of I mean, she had like a kind of a gentle singer-songwriter taste. There was a lot of Linda Ronstadt she played. She kind of had some 80s tunes. I think that's maybe a main difference is she had kind of a 80s sensibility, 70s and 80s, whereas my dad had like a 50s and 60s sensibility. So I think really it was more divided by decades. They're both quite eclectic and there was some overlap, particularly overlap in the singer-songwriters of the 60s and 70s,
Yeah.
like Joan Baez and Carly Simon and Carole King. There's a lot of overlap there. But yeah, my dad had, kind of the oldies and Motown and then of course he was, Beatles fan. So
Yeah.
The Beatles.
That's a wonderful mixture of music to get exposed to as
Yeah.
a youngster. That's fantastic. I'm going to ask you for track 3 to tell me, please, the song that reminds you of your time at school.
Yeah, this is a funny one. I think it was probably there were a lot, but I came up and they. I mean, is this school like elementary school or is this like high school era?
I guess maybe high school. I guess.
High school, okay, that's what I chose. So it would be The Funeral by Band of Horses, if I was going to be honest about that. That whole kind of it was the emos into alternative into like kind of folk rock kind of scene that was going on at the time, and that one was really on repeat in my social groups and everything. Everyone knew that song. We would all sing it.
It's an incredible record.
Yeah, it is.
They're an incredible band, and I was lucky enough to interview Ben from Band of Horses on here a couple of years ago, and yeah, I was a ridiculously big fan, and I had to really do my best not to let that come across. I was trying to be the professional and ask him all about his band, but I just had so many nerdy questions I wanted to ask him because I was such a fan. Tell me a little about school, and I mean, I guess firstly, did you enjoy it?
School, like high school? I had maybe my high school experience wasn't the best. I was kind of not very popular, I guess. So I just and I was kind of a weird like drama kid, I think, in high school. And so, I was always doing one of the unconventional plays and just I was had an odd social experience in high school, I think. But in a lot of ways it was very like quintessential like early aughts teen drama where like the nerdy kid who's the drama kid and all that stuff. I think it's quite a cliche maybe in high school.
Was you confident?
Was I confident in high school? That's a good question. I would say I was bold. I'm not sure if confident is the right word, but I certainly was maybe a lot more forthcoming about putting a lot of personality out than but maybe I'm a little more subdued now than I was back in high school. I was quite a character, I think.
It's that juxtaposition between, to quote you, he's nerdy drama kid, but then drama kid then has to get on a stage, and I'm always kind of, where does that confidence come from to be able to get up on stage? Because there's so many people that might have bags of confidence wandering around school, but to get up on stage and perform, that's daunting to a lot of people. And I just wonder where that kind of confidence come from.
I'm not sure. To be honest, I am quite shy, I think, and just by nature, I think it was just the desire to do whatever it is that I was doing had to outweigh my fear of doing it. And I think it's the same now, getting on stage now. It's not it's not the most natural part of this whole thing for me. I love being in the studio. I love working on, you know, tinkering with a record and just making change after change, listening to different tones, and just hours and hours of like laborious, tedious work like that. I just love. The performance side of it, it's just my desire to put forward the music or the performance or whatever it is. It really just has to outweigh the fear of doing it. Yeah, I think that's, so I wouldn't necessarily call it confidence in that way. It's more of like a compulsion or like a drive.
Are you driven?
I would say driven. Yeah, it's like just feel compelled to do it. I don't know.
I find it interesting because you know you've chosen an industry to work in that's one of the most competitive industries you know that there is, and I think anybody that strives for success and to get the music heard in that industry, I think there has to be a big level of drive.
Definitely. I mean, I think it's just, I can't speak for the way the industry was, so I don't really have much to compare it to, but at least the way that it is now, you definitely feel like you're kind of running on fumes at a certain point. It's like, it's a lot of, it's a lot of expended effort for sometimes, you know, it's just a labor of love. It's just, there's so much you have to do, and a lot of it, you know, isn't the most stable work.
Yeah.
And so you really just have to love it. At the end of the day, you have to just feel compelled to do it or believe in what you're putting out there so much that you just kind of fight against the current a bit. And I think it is rewarding work. At least at the end of the day, I feel really fulfilled, despite the difficulties, I think.
I'm going to ask you for another track now. I'm going to ask you to tell me the first record you remember buying from a store.
So, this is a funny one. I, it has to be an Enya record. I can't remember which one it was, but I had, it would have been during my, like, you know, adolescence, probably 11, 12, 13. And I had massive Enya years where I just got all of her records and listened to them back to back in chronological order. I like memorized all of the lyrics, and I even looked up like the translations of the lyrics and everything, and like really got immersed in how transporting her music was and is. And so yeah, it would have been, I probably started with The Memory of Trees, I think. I had to pin it down to one record.
That's an interesting artist to be listening to in such young years, because it's quite there's a lot of levels to Enya, isn't there? It's like, and as you say, a lot of it is sung in Gaelic, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that I'm now starting to understand why you was, the nerdy kid. If you're now translating Enya records in your downtime.
See, maybe I should have thought before I like admitted to all this. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. It's I mean, but to be fair, that's not something I probably broadcast at school.
Yeah. I read an interview with Enya years and years and years ago, and she said at the time, I think it was around the time that Orinoco Flow was a huge global hit,
Yeah.
and she was saying, obviously, most press, but she speaks in English, and but she said she'll spend obviously all her time speaking in English, but she still dreams in Gaelic, and I thought that was quite interesting that
Yeah,
you
that
still
is
dream
nice.
in a different language.
Yeah.
I just want to sort of go back to those formative years, and you said you were doing drama and stuff. Did you have any idea what you wanted to do when you grew up?
Well, I was an imaginative young person, I think. I had a lot of different ambitions. I really did want to be an actor. I think I was very interested in musical theater at the time. So I liked to perform musical theater. I like to write. I started sort of making forays into songwriting about age 13. Um, excuse me. And I think that was, yeah, I knew that there was something for me in the creative fields. I wasn't exactly sure what, but but I had a lot of other interests too. So I think at that age I was really just kind of exploring and trying to figure out what the right fit would be. I'm still surprised that I'm actually doing music right now. It's like it is kind of surreal, but yeah.
I'm going to ask you for track 5 to
Mhm.
tell me the song that soundtracked your year's clubbing.
This is funny. So, I mean, I didn't really admittedly have a clubbing phase. We didn't really have a club in my hometown of any kind. But we did like dance and I think at like parties and things. It was like classic 90s, well 80s, but specifically 90s dance pop, like Another Night, Another Dream, the Real McCoys, like that kind of thing. We kind of playfully that was definitely on repeat in a lot of those memories. So
I'm gonna I'm gonna take you home for the next track,
mm.
and I'm gonna ask you to tell me a favourite song from an artist from your home county. Now, I'll give you 10 points for this, right? Because the email that you replied when you sent your tracks over, you went county or country. Everybody just goes for country, and I'll have to explain that the question is based on your county.
Yeah.
So you flagged it, so that's good. So you get 10 points for that.
Well, great.
But
Um,
then, but then you've got none from your home county, so you lose all them points again.
I know. So my home county is actually not going to be LA County because I spent most of my youth growing up in like Kern County. I believe there's only one artist that I actually know of who is from Kern County. I think Merle Haggard. Um,
Okay.
is it Merle Haggard? It's, it's like a country artist
Hmm.
is from Kern County. So I would have to say that, or actually
I
maybe.
mean, you could go Edinburgh.
Oh, I could. I suppose I could. I suppose now I could. Oh, that opens things up. Hmm. Well, let's see. I don't know if he's specifically from the Edinburgh area, but he's quite active in Edinburgh. I really enjoy listening to King Creosote recently.
Oh, I was so lucky. I had him on
You
about
did?
7 months ago. What a
Yeah,
lovely human being.
yeah.
What a crazy human being, but a beautiful human being. Oh my God, yeah. Let's talk about him. How did you discover his beautiful music?
Oh gosh. I don't know. There's just some. So it's interesting. I was unknowingly listening to several Scottish artists before I came to Scotland, before I was really aware that they were from Scotland. And I believe that I came across his music just by chance,
Yeah.
and just really loved one of his songs. And then yeah, I kind of picked it up from there. And then when I came here, I was like, oh, King Chris, so
Yeah.
he's around. Like it's been pretty interesting.
How has it been from sort of, playing in sort of musical circles in the States to then coming and being part of a scene in Edinburgh?
I mean, my music has been very well received in Edinburgh, and I think part of it is because it's very lyric based. What I write tends to be it's very lyrically dense. And so Edinburgh is, known as the city of writers, and they really listen closely to lyrics. And playing here I started at kind of open mic nights and folk sessions. And even just playing those, people would say to me after the fact, like, oh, the lyrics. And then they'd kind of say back to me one of the lyrics, and I was like flabbergasted, because that didn't usually happen, I have to say, in California. Not that it was impossible, or not that it would never happen. It's just that wasn't my experience of playing the venues that I was playing there. So I think it's just been a really unique and very special experience playing here. And I feel like I've kind of found a good home base for my music here.
This is your last track, and I'm going to ask you now to tell me a song that you think many people may not know that you would like them to hear, please.
So I said The Things I Say by Joanna Newsom.
Yeah.
And that track is from Divers, her, I believe, oh gosh, 2016. I can't remember the year, but it was from the record that she put out. And it's an interesting track in that record, I think, because it's one of the most conventional and conventionally structured songs that she has on that record. And just the length of it is sort of like a regular song that's interspersed in all of these very nuanced and very intricate pieces. I love that entire record, but that song, it just kind of hides a little bit. I love those tracks that just hide, and you really have to mine what the artist is doing in order to find them. And that one just has some very beautiful and poignant observations, and I think it's the juxtaposition between all of that intricacy and then just that like gentle simplicity that she introduces with that track. And I really, it's one of those that I try and show people when I can and everything. It's just an example of just like a pure feeling, and it's just really beautiful.
We make it easy for people to go and listen to the tracks that you've chosen today, because we put together a little Spotify playlist to accompany the podcast. I actually think Joanna Newsom she's not on Spotify, is she?
She's not on Spotify. Sorry,
I was just thinking Joanna Newsom.
Yeah,
if I'm right, she's not on there.
Yeah, she's very known for not being on Spotify. She's on Apple Music, though.
Yeah. Well, apart from Joanna Newsom, all the other tracks will be on there. And of course, your music will be on there as well. So let's talk a little bit about your music and what's happening and why you're here today talking records with me.
Sure, yeah. So right now, actually, in, I believe, 2 days, I'm about to release my second full-length album. The first full-length album I did, it's called Lightning and Fire, is kind of a home done, recorded, self-produced kind of, well, it was a collaboration with a few musicians and a producer friend of mine, but it was very much unofficial, like bedroom album. And then this is my first full-length studio album. It's called Gravity of Gold, and yeah, it'll be out on Friday. And I am really excited about it. I think it's just it's a long time. It's one of those things where, you know, the songs have been kind of brewing for a few years, and now they're all together and they're all done, and some of them are exactly what I thought they were going to be, and some of them are very different than what I originally anticipated. And I'm really happy with it, and I don't hate it, which is nice.
That's good. That's a good thing. And will there be like live shows to follow?
There will. So I mean, I'm going to be doing a record store kind of launch this Sunday the 15th at a record store in Leith called Good Vibes, and then I'll be doing an album kind of launch, a longer show where we'll do a kind of a modified playthrough of the album at a venue called Cabaret Voltaire in Edinburgh on the 19th, and then I'll be playing Old Hairdressers in Glasgow. Believe that one's the 26th. And I'm hoping to have some dates potentially in Ireland this year, and I'm hoping to get down to England as well.
Fantastic. And if people want to keep up to speed with any updates on dates in England or Ireland, or to visit the shows that you just mentioned there, where's the best place to keep up to speed with everything that you're doing?
So probably, I mean, my website is a great place. It's just alasdeliona.com. Instagram is just Alas de Liona. I'm on TikTok and also Facebook under the same name. So it's all pretty, and there are obviously links to it from my website. So everything's right there.
Fantastic. Well, if it's all right with you, we'll tag you in the post when this episode drops, so people, if they're not following you already, can go and do so.
Yeah, of course. That'll be great.
Fantastic. Alas, it's been so nice having a chat with you today about records. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. It's been really lovely.
Absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure. I'm going to press stop, but don't go anywhere.